Just imagine building something so secure that it actually slows you down. Crazy, right? Well, that's exactly what happened with Cardano, and now even Charles Hoskinson admits one big mistake that let Solana speed right past them. Trust me, this crypto story has a twist that you just won't see coming. So, grab a coffee and let me tell you a little story. It's about how my favorite crypto, Cardano, shot itself in the foot, figuratively speaking, just when it was about to sprint ahead. So back in September of 2021, I was on cloud 9. My ADA, Cardano's token, hit an all-time high of around $3.10. For a brief, glorious moment, Cardano was the third biggest crypto in the world. Third, I remember thinking, this is it. We're heading to the moon. The buzz was insane because Cardano was finally rolling out smart contracts after years of academic buildup. Everyone, including myself, was hyped for that Cardano big kind of brain move. The Alonzo hard fork, would solidify its place at the top. But here's the thing, right when Cardano was supposed to flex on the world, something felt off. And I couldn't shake the question, did Cardano's own strategy secretly hold it back? By the end of this story, you're going to see exactly what Charles Hoskinson himself confessed, and why Solana came out of nowhere to steal Cardano's thunder. So, stick around, especially if you're a fellow Cardano fan who lived through the roller coaster. Now, I promise that this will make you see the whole saga in a new light. And if you're new to the ADA gang, well, you're about to get the inside scoop from someone who's actually been there, felt that. So let's jump on right into it. Picture September 2021. Cardano's Alonzo upgrade is live, finally enabling smart contracts on the chain. Now, we're all cheering. ADA's price is pumping. Expectations are sky high. But then reality hits like a plot twist. Developers start trying to actually use these new smart contracts on Cardano, and it's, well, let's just say it's kind of a pain. See, Cardano chose at least a very unique approach to smart contracts called the eUTXO model. Now, without getting too in the kind of weeds, it's actually similar to how Bitcoin handles transactions, but kind of souped up for smart contracts. Super secure, it's predictable, and it's academically kind of rigorous. Now, the kind of thing that makes you feel safe as an investor because, hey, Cardano hadn't had any kind of major hacks or meltdowns. That's the kind of beauty of its design. It's like a fortress built to be rock solid. But here's the flip side. That fortress was so rigid that it was tough for people to actually build things inside it. Right? Developers found Cardano's kind of early smart contract environment inflexible and kind of hostile to actually work with. Now, I remember a buddy of mine, a developer who was super excited about Cardano, literally throw his hands up and go, man, writing a simple dApp on Cardano feels like solving a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. Now, at first, I kind of laughed off because we all know the sequence to Rubik's Cubes by now, right? But I then, of course, tried dabbling around with a decentralized application on Cardano myself, and I kind of felt it. Right? Things that were plug and play on other platforms were, well, like advanced chemistry on Cardano. Right? The learning curve was steep. The tools were immature back then, and unless you were deep into Haskell, that's the language, you actually just hit a wall. So here we have Cardano, the ultra reliable tortoise, chugging along carefully. But guess who came sprinting into the race around the same time? Solana, the proverbial kind of hare, if you will. Now, Solana popped up in 2020 and basically said, hey, developers, come over here. You can build stuff fast and easy. And many did. Solana's whole vibe was about speed and throughput, at least when they kept it online, right? We're talking blazingly fast transactions, an absolute playground for developers who found Ethereum just too slow and Cardano too academic. And by 2021, while Cardano was struggling to get devs comfortable, Solana was like the new kind of nightclub that had all the cool developers, at least all the cool developers wanted to actually party at. Now, I'm not going to lie, I kind of even felt a little bit of the FOMO, right? It was hard not to when you see projects launching left and right on Solana, and Sol's price was shooting up accordingly. Developers and projects, they all flocked to Solana because it offered a faster, more flexible environment. Meanwhile, Cardano was still kind of teaching devs smart contracts 101 with a kind of thick textbook of strict rules. Now, I remember venting about this in our community Discord server. It's a free educational Discord, by the way. The link is in the description if you want to join our crypto chats. And we were all talking and asking questions like, why is building on Cardano so hard? Is it just us? Well, it turns out that it wasn't just us. Even Charles Hoskinson now says it flat out. They made building on Cardano way too difficult at the start. Now, in a recent kind of candid interview, Hoskinson admitted something pretty huge. And when I say huge, I mean for those of us who've actually been cheering Cardano on, it was like hearing your favorite coach say, all right, we messed up the play. Now, he said that we bet wrong on the smart contract model with Cardano. We lost that wave of momentum and Solana got it. That's a phenomenal example of where we bet wrong. Now, we bet wrong, oof. Now, let that sink in for a second. The founder of Cardano basically said, yeah, our approach, which we thought was the best approach, actually ended up costing us. Now, we were too rigid. We missed the big wave. And Solana caught that wave and surfed it to the crypto top 10. Heck, the top 6 now in market cap. So when Charles, says those words, my jaw dropped. Like, I actually kind of paused the video and said, wow. Right? Because for the longest time, right, Cardano diehards, myself included, defended the slow and steady approach. Security over speed, quality over quick hacks. You know the drill, right? And don't get me wrong here, right? I still love the philosophy, but seeing Solana zoom ahead, and Solana, which by the way has its own share of, moments where it can't even keep the network online or remember all of the outages and, that would kind of trend on crypto Twitter. Yeah, all of those things, right? So seeing Solana outrun Cardano made me realize just how much that early developer unfriendly design actually hurt Cardano's momentum. And now Hoskinson himself is basically validating what critics had been saying, that Cardano's early smart contracts were secure, but they were not accessible enough. And that lack of accessibility, it cost them dearly. Now, before I continue and tell you how Cardano turned things around, because it did actually fight back, this story is not over, I actually have to put on my kind of responsible hat for just a second. You know the deal, so here it comes, right? This might shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your own responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, that's the disclaimer mode off, storyteller mode back on. So thanks for bearing with me on that. I had to say it, you know how it goes. Right, now let's talk about what happened after Cardano's bet wrong moment, because if you think that Charles and the kind of Cardano community just sat in a corner sulking, oh man, you would be wrong. Now, one thing that I respect about Cardano is that it's a long-term thinker. And yes, they move slowly at times, but they're also very methodical. So after that 2021's smart contract growing pains, the team got to work on making the developer experience better without sacrificing the security that they're so proud of. So let's fast forward to about a year later, the Vasil hard fork. Now, if you're not familiar, Vasil was an upgrade named after a beloved community member, and it went live around September 2022. Now, Vasil didn't get as much mainstream hype as Alonzo did, but in my opinion, it was a game changer for building on Cardano. It enhanced the Plutus smart contract language, basically Plutus 2.0, making the whole process of writing and running smart contracts more efficient. Let's think of it like Cardano saying, all right, devs, We heard you. Here are some power tools and a user manual. Go create. Now, Vasil improved throughput. It reduced transaction costs and made scripts more capable. In plain English, building on Cardano got cheaper, faster, and a little bit more normal. They even started allowing devs to write smart contracts in other languages through various sidechains and toolkits. By 2025, guess what? You could write a Cardano contract in Rust or TypeScript, and not just Haskell. For devs, that's huge because it's kind of like speaking in languages that they already know rather than having to learn Elvish to cast a spell. And it's working. Slowly, but, surely. Now that developer activity is picking up. So how do I know? Well, one big indicator is the number of smart contracts on Cardano's mainnet absolutely exploded over the last couple of years. Now, in fact, just recently, the network quietly hit a milestone of over 300,000 smart contracts deployed on Cardano. And yes, you heard that right, 300K. Now, to put that into perspective, about 4 years ago, Cardano had exactly 0 smart contracts because, well, the feature just didn't exist yet. Now it's at hundreds of thousands, thanks to steady upgrades and more devs coming on board. So as an ADA holder, that warms my heart. It's like seeing the slow kid in class finally starting to act, or at least acing, I should say, the tests after getting the right tutor and study guide. Better late than never, right? And let's not forget, through all of this, Cardano's commitment to security never wavered, right? 0 major hacks on the platform to date, which is kind of rare in crypto land. So in a sense, I guess Cardano is built this strong. It's unshakable foundation. Now, it just took a while to add in the fancy kind of stuff on top. Now, compare that to Solana's journey. Now, Solana, the fast and flashy rival, definitely sprinted ahead in 2021 and 2022. Its ecosystem, it grew super fast, and Sol's price, well, if you caught that right, that wave, then your portfolio was probably singing. At Solana's peak hype, it kind of felt like the Ethereum alternative, and a lot of people were crowning it as such. But it wasn't all sunshine, was it? Solana had some pretty public outages, and some exploits in its DeFi applications. Nothing is perfect after all, yet despite those hiccups, Solana still emerged as a major hub for devs who actually wanted an alternative to Ethereum's high fees and to Cardano's steep learning curve. It kind of paid off. Solana is now chilling at around the 6th spot among all cryptos by market cap, whereas Cardano, which was number 3, is now actually hovering around number 10. So that's a big shift in the leaderboard. And as a Cardano fan, that stings just a little bit. I won't lie. It's kind of like watching your home team lose a championship game because you played too cautiously in the first half. But I'm not here to mope. In fact, I'm optimistic about this next part. Cardano might be down in the race right now, but it's not out. In fact, it's far from it. You could say that Cardano pulled a tortoise versus the hare move. Solana, the hare, sprinted ahead early, then, had to kind of take a couple of breathers, right? Cardano, the tortoise, was slow off the line, but keeps plugging along. And as they say, or at least as the saying goes, slow and steady can win the race, or at least make a very strong comeback. Okay, so let me share a personal anecdote here because it really underlines this whole dynamic. When ADA hit $3 and then kind of started dropping because of the ecosystem progress wasn't keeping up with the hype, I had a choice. Do I dump my ADA and chase Solana's rocket? A lot of people did. There's no shame in that. I, however, held on to my ADA because I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm not going to lie. Right? I did actually allocate a bit of my portfolio to Solana as well because, I'm not that stubborn, right? I do hold Solana and Cardano. In fact, I remember buying some Solana using my Bluefin account. That's one of the crypto exchanges that I actually use regularly. And the link that's in the description, that is an affiliate link, by the way, right? Which helps support the channel here. And anyway, I'm thinking if you can't beat them, you should probably join them. It kind of felt weird, almost like kind of cheating on Cardano. You kind of get the feeling, right? But there I was, or here I was, and a proud ADA holder, kind of, since way back in the day, suddenly also rooting for Solana to do well, right? But that's crypto for you, right? Never marry your bags. Plus, supporting both sides was kind of my way of hedging the markets. So if Cardano took off slowly, maybe Solana would cover the faster gains and vice versa. Now, having witnessed both sides of the story here, and here's the interesting thing, right? Cardano's measured approach means that nowadays I don't lose sleep at night over my ADA. I know it's kind of built on a solid foundation. With Solana, I'll be real, there are nights that I'd see news of Solana's network pausing, and I would be like, uh-oh, I should probably worry about my Solana position. Different vibes entirely. Plus, obviously, with all the VCs, there's always that kind of concern that maybe they're going to dump their Solana on the retail investors. It's a kind of a classic trade-off, I guess, between Cardano and Solana, at least in tech, right? Move fast and break things versus actually move carefully and ensure resilience. Neither is actually categorically right or wrong, but they do have different outcomes on different timelines. Charles Hoskinson's admission that Cardano bet wrong essentially means that they know now that they should have actually found a better balance in the earlier on, or at least early days. Maybe even a little less academic and a little bit more pragmatic. Not to kind of alienate developers, but I guess what I find actually is admirable here is that the man actually owned up to it, right? He's optimistic that the long run, Cardano's early choices, even if they were slowed things down a bit, will be actually vindicated longer term. And I kind of see his point here. Like, if you do zoom out, the race isn't over in 1 year or 2 year sprints, is it? It's a marathon here. Ethereum's been around since 2015 and only recently moved to proof of stake. It is still evolving. So Cardano taking a few years to kind of really hit its stride with decentralized applications might not actually matter much when we actually look back a decade from now. Already, the groundwork is being laid, or at least is kind of paying off, I should say, and we've got stablecoins on Cardano. We've got DeFi platforms cropping up, NFTs even. The chain stats or on-chain stats are rising, and heck, just the other week, Cardano's network proceeded, at least processed, I should say, like something like $4 billion in volume in just a week. The community is growing and building, even if it doesn't always make flashy headlines. Now, in our Discord, remember the link is in the description, right? Totally free, by the way. Come and say hi. We actually have developers and users alike who are, tinkering with Cardano projects that simply weren't actually possible back in 2021. Now, that to me signals progress, maybe slower than maybe some impatient people actually wanted, but progress nonetheless. And how about Solana? Well, I won't leave you hanging on that front either. Solana's chugging along, learning from its own mishaps, right? They've been working on increasing stability and decentralization because, newsflash, when you kind of grow that fast, you inevitably hit some pretty big speed bumps. Now, Solana is by no means dead. I mean, it's definitely become a hub for meme coin bullshit, but they had to go somewhere. It's one of the most, I guess, vibrant ecosystems from a meme coin perspective. Now, in fact, I would say that we're kind of lucky as crypto enthusiasts to have both of these chains pushing each other forward. Cardano keeps Solana honest, at least to a point. I don't think there's terribly too much honesty with a lot of these crypto projects, if we're being brutally honest. But at least Cardano helps Solana, keep honest about its security. Solana keeps Cardano on its toes about user experience and how important it is to have the right tools for the developers. And of course, we can't ignore the speed. So, what's the moral of the story here? Well, for me, it's that every decision, I should say, in crypto land, it has a bit of a trade-off, doesn't it, right? Cardano's biggest mistake was essentially over-optimizing for security and rigor at the cost of being, early to market with decentralized applications. It's kind of like they built a state-of-the-art vault, but actually then realized that, oh shoot, we made the door really hard to open for the shopkeepers, right? Meanwhile, of course, Solana flung the door open and said, everyone come on in, right? But then they had to deal with a few broken windows along the way, right? Neither path is going to be perfect here, but Cardano's story didn't end in 2021, and Solana's success isn't a one-time thing either. As an investor and fan, I've learned to appreciate the longer game. Hoskinson's confession wasn't a sign of weakness. I actually see it as a sign of maturity. Like if a project leader can say, yep, we messed up here, but here's how we're fixing it, well, that gives me more confidence than any amount of chest thumping about, we're the best actually ever would. At the end of the day, I'm still rooting for Cardano's vision of a peer-reviewed, robust blockchain world, but I'm also not blind to the reality that speed and ease do matter. They matter an awful lot. The good news is that Cardano is finally addressing that, and Solana's tackling its weak spots too. So maybe in a couple of years we won't see it as Cardano versus Solana, but maybe Cardano and Solana both thriving in their own little niches. Solana becoming, shitcoin city, for example, and maybe Cardano becomes the corporate kind of blockchain. And as for seasoned Cardano fans like me, it's actually been a bit of a wild ride, and it's not even over yet, right? If you kind of stuck around this long, I bet that you have your own thoughts on whether Cardano's big gamble will ultimately pay off. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Is Cardano still the tortoise that's going to surprise the hare, or did the hare run too far ahead this time? If you've enjoyed coming along on this little crypto adventure with me, make sure to smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and join me for the next story. I'll see you over there.